Hello, very good to be back with you again. It's the next 6 months here, a daily show for, next week or two on YouTube with me, and Mark Thomas, author of 99%, and probably, I think, a mathematical genius, although you might dispute that, Mark, being modest.
I would dispute it.
All right, fair enough. We've got a question. We've got lots of questions coming in, actually. If you would like to send a question for Mark to contemplate, then do so, please. Just right here on YouTube. Just make a comment. We will pick it up in the normal course of events, and you will see it. So today's question comes from Rowena. Thank you, Rowena. And Rowena says, if people are better off today than in 1980, but are worse off than in 2007, what has there been too much and not enough of since 2007? And that strikes me as a very reasonable question, Mark. What's your answer?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic question. In a nutshell, the answer is we haven't had enough good policies. Now, policy formulation is quite complicated. Every time if you think about a policy, when you start to look at it in detail, you realize, it's a bit more complex than I thought. It's got all these unintended consequences. But fundamentally, there are only 4 types of policy. Every policy either grows the pie or it doesn't grow the pie.
Okay.
By pie, I mean the total value of the goods and services that are available for people like you and me and everybody else to enjoy during the year. So it either grows the pie or it doesn't, and it either shares it fairly or it doesn't. So that only gives you 4 types of policy. And in fact, you've got a slide I see cunningly prepared.
Wow, this is a special Mark Thomas slide, isn't it? It's a Mark Thomas special, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, I like it. Yes. Okay, talk us through it.
So essentially, as I said, there are just those 2 questions. Are we growing the pie or are we not growing the pie? Are we sharing it fairly or are we not sharing it fairly? So that gives you these 4 types of policy. So on the top right, you can see in the green box there, shared growth policies. They grow the pie and they share it fairly. So of course, we want to have a lot more of that sort of thing. And examples of that are things like investment in fundamental research and development, something which, although it's the engine of future prosperity, the UK has been doing far little of for far too long. But also investment in things like healthcare and infrastructure. All of those are shared growth policies, and we would like to see more of those things. Then on the top left, you've got the type 1 policies, the captured growth policies. So they do grow the pie, but they don't share it fairly. So if you think about widespread automation, for example, that could be good for growing the pie because it enables society as a whole to produce more goods and services, and therefore as a whole to enjoy more goods and services. But it can have serious casualties. A lot of people could lose their jobs. And if we don't do anything about those casualties, then actually we will create more poverty. We'll also create more wealth, but we'll create more poverty. So those policies need to be balanced, which brings us to the type 3 policies on the bottom right there. Type 4 policies on the bottom right there, balancing policies. So if we say, well, actually, of course, we do want to make use of new technologies. We do want to automate more, but we don't want to leave people behind. And you have to construct policies for job creation, for reskilling, for benefits while people are reskilling, all of those sorts of things, so that you don't create an underclass. The rising tide genuinely does lift all boats.
Yeah.
And then the final one, the type 3 policies, are vulture policies, which neither grow.
It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. That's the one in red. Yeah.
It's in red, and it's called vulture policies. So you could guess that I don't like them. But you might think, well, why would any government do a vulture policy? Why would any government undertake a policy which it knows is going to reduce the size of the economy and is going to give the benefits disproportionately to a tiny group of people? But actually, we have a government which is, as we are speaking, contemplating a no-deal Brexit. And the government's own analysis says a no-deal Brexit would reduce the size of the pie. And if you reduce the size of the pie, it's inevitable that some people's slices will shrink. But the people whose slices will shrink will not be the hedge fund owners who backed the Leave campaign and backed Boris Johnson's campaign to be leader. They will be making out like bandits. So that is a clear example of a vulture policy. So to come right back to Rowena's question, the simple answer is we want a lot more of the policies on the right of that diagram, the shared growth policies and the balancing policies, which we have had far too little of since 2007. And we want a lot less, in particular, of the vulture policies. We want to get rid of the vulture policies altogether.
Fantastic.
So that's the short summary.
Yeah, that's actually, I think you can't complain about that, Rowena, can you, really? I think you've got very good value there from Mark. More questions. We want lots more questions, please. We have some more questions. We're going to deal with more tomorrow, but do leave them right here on the comment section on YouTube. Mark, so your book, 99%, is full of facts and figures and evidence and proof and this, that, and the other. Irrefutable, you might think. But these days, we're living in a post-truth world where your truth may not be mine. How do we deal with that?
Well, that's a really interesting question, whether truth is purely relative, whether it's just a matter of opinion. And of course, most scientists believe that it's not just a matter of opinion. If I hold up a paperclip and I let go of it, it doesn't actually matter what my opinion is. It's fallen.
Yep.
That's not.
I think we can all agree on that, can't we?
I could have believed that my upbeat optimism was going to hold the paperclip up there by pure strength of will and belief in the exceptionalism of the British character, but nevertheless, the paperclip fell. And so there is such a thing as absolute truth. It's quite hard outside pure mathematics and some of the hard sciences to find something that is an absolute truth. But it's not so hard to find things which are broadly speaking true, even in the social sciences. So in the book, we've got this picture, which I think you've got a copy of here, which shows a spectrum of truth ranging from that kind of absolute truth, like the paperclip likely to fall when I release it, through to absolute falsehood. Yes, here's the picture. And you can see that actually a lot of what happens in political discussion is not absolute truth. And in fact, some of it, it goes right into deliberate misrepresentation and absolute falsehood. So right now in America, we have a president who is claiming that there is widespread fraud at the polls against him. And in fact, that appears to be absolute falsehood. There have been a few cases of fraud uncovered, but they've been very small, and they have been Republicans whose fraud was in an attempt to support Donald Trump. So a lot of his utterances are at the level of absolute falsehood. Now, I think I saw a poll yesterday that said only 20% of Americans believe that actually he was robbed, that the election was unfair. 80% believe Joe Biden won fair and square. And at one level, that's heartening, because 80% is a lot more than 20%. But 20% of Americans is 60 million people who have gone post-fact. They've gone post-truth. They live in a different world where if Donald Trump says the paperclip isn't going to fall, it isn't going to fall. And that's really dangerous, because once you've gone post-truth to that level, there's no obvious limit as to where you would draw the line. What would you balk at doing? Would you balk at assassinating every Democratic governor in the country? Well, maybe you wouldn't, because you believe that they're doing the work of Satan. I don't know if you've come across this QAnon conspiracy theory, which is quite prevalent among our right-wing stuff as well. QAnon is propounding an idea that the Democrats, and probably anybody else anywhere in the world who is not pro-Trump, is part of a sinister cabal to eat babies. And
It solved the global population crisis, at least, wouldn't it?
Well, I suppose it would.
Actually, Jonathan Swift suggested that some years ago, didn't he? But he was completely writing in satire.
He was writing in satire, and a very good satire too.
Yeah.
He thought it was unthinkable that anybody could contemplate the eating of, in this case, Irish babies. And indeed, you would have thought it would be unthinkable that anyone could believe that there's a whole worldwide conspiracy to eat babies. But there are people who believe it. I don't suppose it's as many as 60 million, but there are a lot of people.
I don't know.
Well,
So,
who doesn't?
so the thing is this, that I think this is a chart that I think well bears great contemplation, actually, but we're not going to spend that much more time because we only want to be with you about 10 minutes every day. But this chart is in your book, isn't it, Mark?
It is. It's in the book. It's and
good.
Indeed, there's a big exploration of this. Of the whole issue of going post-truth in the book. It's one of the major themes because the first part of the book really looks at what happens if we don't act, and the second part is saying, well, why haven't we acted? And the reason we haven't acted is because to too great an extent, we've gone post-truth. We haven't gone as far as the QAnon people, but most of us, we talked about the myth of unaffordability. Most of us have swallowed at least one of these myths.
Yeah, that's right. I'm as guilty as anybody else. I used to think that until I met you. So the thing is here, Mark, one final question, all right? Because I could keep talking to you all day, really, but everyone's got to get on with their lives. Is there a way back? Is there a way back? We're so sort of fragmented and disparate now, and so many people are believing such strange things, which is kind of paradoxical because the internet, I would have thought, would have been a great way to get facts and figures out there to everybody, but it's not turning out like that. So is there a way back?
Well, I think there is a way back. So the internet is really interesting because on that chart that we were looking at, the internet spans all of the spectrum. You can get absolute truth on the internet and you can get absolute falsehood on the internet. Yeah. The difficulty, of course, is distinguishing them. In Finland, they've taken this problem very, very seriously because they're right next to Russia, and Russia has launched, as it has in other countries, including the UK, significant disinformation campaigns. But Finland responded to that, and they had a national campaign of education, teaching people critical thinking, teaching people how to distinguish for themselves whether they're going to believe something or not, and that has been, I believe, very successful. So there are examples of coming back on a grand scale, on a national scale, but it requires commitment, it requires sustained effort, and it requires people who want to come back.
Yeah, that's great. Very, very good stuff, Mark. Please join us tomorrow for the next exciting instalment of the next 6 months. And do share it with your friends, please. Let everybody know that we're doing this because we do need to get the work out there. You can buy Mark's book on this link, 99.redhammer.tv, and we will see you tomorrow.